My name is James Bible. I'm the president of the Seattle-King County branch of the NAACP. That justice is a blind goddess is a fact to which we blacks are wise. Her bandages hide to festering sores that once perhaps were eyes. When these words were uttered by Langston Hughes, we were struggling through segregation, we were struggling through lynchings, we were struggling through fundamental mistreatments of the criminal justice system. Not much has changed, except for I will add that our struggle is now in relation to people of color and the poor. It is not just an issue of African Americans, it's an issue that impacts Asians, Latinos, Native Americans, all groups. It's an issue that impacts the poor whites. We cannot ignore that there's a separate system of justice here in Seattle. We could not ignore that there's a separate system of justice that does not allow for equal opportunity for our children. We could not ignore that there's a separate system of justice that does not allow people to do better once they have transgressed. We can no longer ignore the oppression that people of color and the poor face in our society. In our police department, in the city of Seattle, we have institutional inequalities. We have institutional inequities. We have institutionally embedded problems that prevent people of color and the poor from feeling free to walk down the streets unobstructed. At this stage, the NAACP has to stand on this issue in protecting civil and human rights for all people. The Office of Professional Accountability is a structure that provides nothing more than the illusion of fairness. At this stage, we can say that sending a person that comes through the NAACP doors with a complaint to the Office of Professional Accountability is like subjecting that person to a second victimization at the hands of the police department. And because justice is a blind goddess, we are appealing to those with eyes. We are appealing to the people. We are appealing to all of you. We ask you to tell the stories that you have heard today. I ask you to stand up against police brutality. I ask you to stand up against police misconduct. I ask you to talk to your council members and tell them this is an important issue. And tell them that we will not accept second-class human status for poor people and minorities. We will not accept second-class human status for poor people and minorities. Tell your council members that what we want is a truly independent system that provides more than the illusion of fairness. What we want is a system in which we feel like the police are accountable to the people. What we want, and we have to talk about this now, y'all. What we want is a system that is effective. But an effective system can only be as good as the sum of its parts. And so as we create a new system, as we work towards a new system, as the council members come on board and we start to undo institutional racism that can be found in the Seattle Police Department, we still have to look at the sum of its parts. And so what do we know based on recent months? We know that our Seattle Police Chief exonerated Officers Newbert and Tejan prematurely, without authority, and with knowledge of absolute wrongdoing. We know that our chief was informed by Kate Flommer, the internal auditor, that she felt additional complaints need to be lodged or sustained in terms of the failure to document a witness, coupled with the fact that that particular witness actually had marijuana in his possession that the police officers took from him and didn't document. That's a question that everybody wants to know. What happened to the marijuana? We cannot ignore that that chief still made that decision and never brought that to your attention to make a decision on that issue. We could not ignore that. We could not ignore that when pressed. And we found out that it was an issue of email exchanges between Kate Flommer and the police chief, that the police chief had deleted several emails. We cannot ignore that that's actually in violation of the revised Code of Washington. We could not ignore these things. We could not ignore this cover-up. I'm going to say it again. We cannot ignore this cover-up. And let's walk back to the story in 2005 of Mayoko Ali Barnes, a gentleman who was walking out of a bar. One of his friends flips a cigarette or some other piece of paper to the ground, and an officer says, "You really going to do that in front of me?" The gentleman quickly apologizes and explains. But that's not enough. The officer calls other officers. More come, and he is beaten, he is kicked, he is thrown to the ground, and the audio from the police car, one of the many police cars that arrived, you could hear Mayoko Ali Barnes saying, "Why are you kicking me? Why are you hurting me? Please stop." The response from the police department was this: "We are kicking you because of your big mouth." Now what's important to understand is at the end of this incident, after Mayoko Ali Barnes' eye was swollen and bloody and his lip was swollen and bloody, and it was clear that he had been harmed, he was taken to the police station and then transported right over to the jail. It's important to know that instead of the officers being charged with a crime, which they should have been, Mayoko Ali Barnes was charged with crimes: resisting arrest, assault, and obstruction. And I will tell you this, that Mayoko Ali Barnes did not say, "I am going to take the deal and I'm just going to do a certain amount of community service and pretend that this didn't happen to me." No, he didn't. He decided to take that case to trial. And after 4 days of trial, midway through the case, a video shows up. And that video was in the possession of the police department, and that video told the truth. And that video was different than what was written in that police report. 100% different. These are things that the police department cannot change. The case was dismissed immediately upon the arrival of this video, which again, you can hear Mayoko Ali Barnes saying, "Why are you hitting me? Why are you kicking me?" Police response: "It's because of your big mouth." Now it's important to know that all that Mayoko Ali Barnes was doing was watching his friend get cited for a ticket, and the nerve of him, he happened to say something about the Constitution.